Hey, I'm Di Gillett, and this is the Power of Women podcast. We're a platform that celebrates and showcases the strength, resilience, and achievement of women from all walks of life. In each episode, I pose questions to my guests to peel away the layers to reveal the knowledge and the experience that shapes their narrative. So, if you're feeling unseen or unheard, or simply looking for inspiration, then the Power of Women podcast is a great place to join the conversation. Thanks for following and watching the podcast. We'd love more subscribers to help us continue to bring this great free content to you. So jump on board and power the pod. Now for today's episode. Today's guest is a serial entrepreneur who empowers other entrepreneurs. She's helping female founders do the work that really matters to them. And she has her own fabulous podcast, Heads Together. Joining me from the UK is Gill Moakes. Gill, welcome to the Power of Women podcast.
Di, thank you so much for having me. I have been really looking forward to this. Also, I was slightly hypnotized by your voice then. It was beautiful.
Oh,
I
thank
love it.
you. Thank you. My education must amount to something. I'll thank that drama teacher from all of those years ago.
Absolutely. Speech and drama nailed.
Done. Jill, where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Garden of England. So I grew up in Kent, which is the one of the southern counties of England. And it really is. It's called the Garden of England and it's beautiful. It's a
Mm,
very rural, oast houses. I don't know if you guys know of those where we used
we
to make
do.
the
I do.
beer.
Yep.
Yeah. So very beautiful part of England. That's where I grew up. And I actually grew up in a very small at the time village called Snodland, which everyone laughs about now. My friends always say it sounds, is that a place where gnomes live or Snoddyland?
You could probably do another podcast, Jill, called Snogland.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
There
but
you
that was
go.
me.
Wow. So, what were the most powerful memories you've taken away from your childhood in Kent?
Oh, goodness. You know what? I was thinking, I one of the most powerful lessons that I took away from my childhood was that I love more than I love money. So I sound like I'm going in a bit deep on off the bat, but I want to explain why.
Mm.
I had quite a fortunate upbringing. You know, I always seemed to have more pocket money than my friends. I had more holidays. I had more. I always had more. I was a bit spoilt.
Did you recognize that at the time?
Um,
Or is this a reflection?
I think it's a reflection. I think I was a bit, I don't think I was a horribly spoilt child, but I do remember saying to my friends once, well, let's go to my house after school because we have a colour TV. That does make me sound like a bit of an arse. So I might have been a bit of an arse. I'm not sure.
Were you an
But
only
here's the
child?
interesting thing. I
Sorry, I cut you
wasn't,
off.
no. So I
No?
had an older brother and an older sister, but they were much older. So I almost had
Okay.
four parents.
Ah,
Um, and I realized something though on reflection of my childhood, and that was that my friends' parents probably didn't have as much money, but their parents did the little things. So I remember asking my mum why Father Christmas didn't wrap my presents in my stocking when he wrapped all my friends' presents. Yeah.
okay.
So I think that was a big lesson from my childhood was that, yeah, money matters up to a point.
Yeah.
But actually
Yeah.
there
And
was a
some
lot
of
of
the
things that
small
matter
things
more.
you would have really appreciated.
I
That's
really would,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. I think that's
Mm,
probably a true life lesson.
really, yeah, I think so.
Mm.
And it's something I remind myself of every now and then when I think I'm getting a bit money hungry.
Yep.
Mm,
Yep. No, good stuff.
mm.
Jill, I know you've built a career out of empowering other women, but before we get into that, can we talk more about you and let's just ruminate a bit.
Mm.
When we last spoke, you talked about women supporting ourselves, and we had a bit of a chin wag about that in the lead up to today. Feeling limitless and having the physicality to match our mindset. What does that phrase physicality to match our mindset mean to you?
Mm. I love this question, Di, because this is something that would have made me so uncomfortable if someone had wanted me to talk about this not 6 months ago. I would have
Yeah,
felt really
wow.
uncomfortable. Yeah. Um, and I think this is a fairly recent thing for me, bringing a physicality into my business. Into my the way I am in my business, the way I
Mm,
look after myself. I think I neglected myself for a long time. I was so busy building my businesses, I didn't take care of my health, and I didn't practice really any
mm,
self-care. I was an absolute workaholic because, and I think this is quite common with female founders. We love what we do so much. So it
mm,
doesn't feel like work. But of course,
exactly.
hours sitting at a desk like this, not good for us.
Yeah.
Um, and this kind of more embodied approach to my business, certainly, I spend much less time now sitting at my desk, spend much more time walking, much more time outside. And I actually think the way I work with my clients has improved because of that.
I would have no doubt it will have improved. You've got greater
Right.
clarity of mind. You're smelling the roses, literally.
Yes, abs literally.
Mm.
I think my world had got quite small, which is really ironic because I work with women all around the globe.
But
And
you can
yet
do
I
it
feel
from
like
one room.
I can do it from this chair.
Yeah.
And I feel like my world had got a little bit constricted.
Mm.
Um, Yeah, definitely. And I feel so much better now. My menopausal symptoms have eased as I've been eating healthily. I'm losing weight. I'm outside more. I'm more flexible. Like all of these different things are changing. Like kind of everything is changing physically.
Yeah.
Um, and the power of that combined with the mental effect it's having on me is bloody
Mm.
amazing. I
Yeah.
feel incredible.
So was there a tipping point? Was there, or did you just gradually get to the realization that something had to give?
Um, do you know what? Actually, there was a tipping point. I wish there hadn't been, and I wish I had just kind of come to it on my own accord. My blood sugar spiked
Yeah.
and it frightened me. It really frightened me. I just thought, what am I doing to myself?
Mm.
Also, I'd put on so much weight that I was really finding just walking anywhere was a effort. And I just had this, so that it was a combination of a realization and this blood sugar spike that just made me think, oh my goodness, that's actually quite scary. I'm practically
Yeah.
disabling myself.
And was that a slow build up of the weight gain, or did the pandemic and what we went through add a
That
more
certainly exacerbated it. Also, I lost my
mm,
husband to cancer in
oh,
2016. He was only 42, and that was
I'm
such a
sorry, Jill,
traumatic
that's
time.
such a young age. Yeah.
Thanks, Di. Yeah, such a young age. And I think there was that, there was then the pandemic, and
Mm,
and I've always been a comfort eater.
yep.
So with two kind of big life-changing things like that going on, that was a
Yeah.
recipe for just eating and eating to
Mm,
comfort myself
yeah.
and not making good choices. All of the things I can see so clearly now.
Mm,
But when I was in it, I couldn't see it. And also, um, I've always been one of those women who, although I was overweight, people would say to me, "Oh, you've such a pretty face." And do you know what? I think it's a blessing
Thank
and a
God for
curse.
that. And yeah,
Thank
exactly.
God for that pretty face. It is a blessing and a curse because I feel like if I'd been pig ugly, I'd have probably done something about it a bit
Yeah, that's a bit harsh.
earlier. A bit
So tell
harsh.
me, in terms of you, and I know we had a conversation about this, and I've been through a similar scenario, and I hadn't so much gained a lot of weight, but I was coming up to turning 60. I always had said to myself I was going to be better at each birthday than the last, and I'd have to say the last five I'd missed the goal, and I got through, and a bit like you, people have always said, "Oh, you look great," blah blah blah. But I also know, um, fashion's my thing. I know how to dress to disguise any physical changes that are going on, and I could completely mask it, other than sugar bloating in my face from the bowl of chocolate beanies or jubes that were on my desk until late at night doing stupid long hours. But in giving all of that up and now losing a significant amount of weight, which message to anybody who's going through or coming out the other end of menopause, we can do it and it's not that hard. And the magic word is lifestyle, not diet, because diet's a dead set fail. Make it a lifestyle transition. But the biggest thing, Jill, is the clarity of mind. Taking sugar out, being focused on it. I feel, I just feel I'm catching so much more of what's going on. I'm more energized, I'm more driven, no more crushing fatigue that comes from the high sugar intake. And I feel stronger and more energized than I did even when I was in my 30s and 40s. And I was fit in my 30s and 40s, but this is extraordinary.
I just couldn't agree with you more, Di. And sugar, that is, I think for me, that was the turning point.
Mm,
Every other time I've tried to lose weight, and you're so right, I've always tried to lose weight by dieting.
mm,
And I now know that that is just pointless, absolutely pointless. Um, but now I have completely taken sugar, or certainly, refined added sugar out of
yeah.
my diet. I'm not obsessive, if I'm eating in a restaurant and I think the sauce might have a tiny bit of sugar in it, I'm not
No,
obsessive. I'll eat
same,
that.
same. Mm,
But I certainly, if I don't eat sweets or chocolate, and I mean that was my addiction. And the
mm,
clarity of mind is unbelievable.
isn't it?
It's uh, everything I was blaming on menopause, I should have been blaming on sugar.
Yeah, isn't that a really interesting point? Because I would say exactly the same. I thought the crashing fatigue was menopause, and I
Yeah,
thought the brain fog was menopause. It might have been a little bit, but nowhere near um,
agree.
as much as it would have been the cause of the sugar.
Yeah, 100%. I a couple of times before when I'd got to like I was the biggest I'd ever been. I was just so unfit just before I had this, like, oh my gosh, I need to do something. And a couple of times I had fallen asleep sitting here at this desk just with my head down, and I'd actually just nodded off. That's not normal, as I
Yeah,
now know.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I'm so far away from ever doing that now.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mind you,
scary.
I've been known at dinner parties to fall asleep mid conversation and come back. I think there's probably a condition for that. But I can come back and
Brilliant.
go and another thing, and my husband will tell you on an interstate trip to when I was meeting a whole lot of his friends for the first time, and I was talking to a very boring accountant called Bruce at the time, and I just fell asleep at the table.
I love
So
it. But I love the comeback. And another thing.
Absolutely.
That's brilliant.
It's a bit like when you've had an argument and you wake up in the morning and it's like, and another thing.
And I've just remembered another point to batter you with.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. Exactly. So, yeah. So what are you doing
Mm.
differently in the business as a result of this finding and this revelation of improving good health?
Oh,
Anything?
that's exciting. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I am because I prioritize everything apart from me before.
Mm,
So I prioritize my clients, which I still do. So my clients still take priority in the business day. So if I have a client call, that's my focus and priority for the day is bringing my all and my best to that call. But before this change, I was prioritizing my clients, calls with my bookkeeper, um, recording podcasts, social media, writing, everything would get prioritized before taking time for myself.
you're
So
a long way
now it's
down the list.
client
Mm,
work, my time,
yep.
and then whatever else I
Everything
choose to
else.
do with the rest of the day. So,
Yeah.
a walk every day is non-negotiable now. I cannot,
Mm.
and I was saying this to my stepdaughter at the weekend, actually. I can't kind of figure how this change has happened, but now the horrible feeling I get if I haven't fitted a walk in is much stronger than the lazy feeling I used to have if I can't be asked to go for a walk.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And exercise, I mean, it does become an addiction in its own right. Um, in the same way as I think the feeling of well-being has become the replacement addiction in my world to the addiction of sugar.
Mm,
But all of those things are positives. And I'm like you. I now have a fold-up treadmill that goes into one of the hall cupboards, which is my favorite purchase ever.
love
And
them.
um and so it doesn't matter what the weather is or what time of day you might finish, you can still go for a walk. It's where I actually proof the audio and video of any podcast recordings coming back
Great
from
idea.
my sound designer. I do it on the treadmill, so it becomes productive. And if I'm not doing that, it's where I get to watch, a movie or a
Yeah.
series that I'm watching on the iPad and on the treadmill. So it's all good.
All things that I used to hear other people say, and I'd be like, oh, good for you, whatever. Like I was, honestly, I just was so
Sour
not,
grapes.
no, I was so not that person. And
Yeah,
now, how did this happen? I'm the person nodding along saying, yeah, I do that too. And
yeah.
I feel like the well-being club is something I felt I didn't have access to. I wasn't allowed in.
That's an interesting point. Mm,
Mm,
mm.
mm. And it's almost like I felt like an outsider and I would have loved to have been in that club, but I'm not allowed in it. So therefore, I might as well stick being really unhealthy.
And that's true because I think a lot of people put off going to the gym because they feel self-conscious and not fit enough to go to the
Yeah.
gym,
Yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah. So that allowing
Mm,
yourself to join the club, that's an
yeah.
interesting mindset.
Yeah. And to not be embarrassed about saying, I know I have a long way to go in terms of weight loss, but you know what? I'm not hung up on it now. I'm not on a diet. I've just made some changes.
Mm,
It will be what it will be. And yeah,
brilliant. Well
feels
done.
really good. Thank you.
Welcome
Thank
to the
you.
I'm I'm a life
I'm in.
member.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. So, Jill, if I was to ask you now, what is your superpower?
Mm, what is my superpower? I and again, this is would not have been the same answer if you'd asked me this a year ago, but my superpower now is my intuition. I've been doing a
Mm,
lot of work around that, and I have always coached my clients around tuning into their intuition and letting go of that need for constant validation. from external sources, other people or feedback, that kind of thing. Um, I'm not sure I was practicing it that well myself.
Mm,
And that's something that has changed a lot. I trust myself now, and I think my superpower now is my intuition.
mm.
I think I trust it. It doesn't let me down. Um, yeah, I'm claiming that
That's a
one.
great one. And when you say trusting your intuition, it's, that feeds into all of the self-belief characteristics and traits. So that's a fantastic superpower. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, I'm happy
Brilliant.
with it. I'm keeping it.
Yep. Joining that club too.
Yes. Yeah.
So coming up, we're going to unpack Jill's obsession or healthy obsession with female thought leadership coming up shortly. So, Jill, I've been following you on the socials and I'm reading about the work that you do. And the thing that really jumps off the page is you are a superb wordsmith. How do you find the right words to convey your messages so perfectly?
Wow, Di, thank you for that because I back at you. I think you are too. So I really
Thank you.
appreciate that. Um, I especially appreciate it because I still second guess myself a lot when I'm writing. I first thing is I love writing, so it's not a chore for me, but
That
I
shows.
definitely second guess. Thank you. Yeah, I do really enjoy it. Um, what I would say is that I am not a beautiful writer. I think there are some writers out there who are just beautiful. They really can write quite poetically and their storytelling is quite beautiful. I'm not that kind of writer, but I think I absolutely write with the goal of connection.
Mm,
So I write how I talk.
yep.
I think most people say, or a lot of people will say to me that they can tell something I've written. It kind of sounds like me talking.
Mm,
Um,
right
and
tone
that's
of
always my
voice.
goal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. That is always my goal. I'm pretty obsessed with radical authenticity, so I can't stand anything that whether I've written or someone else has written it that doesn't sound like me. So I do a lot of reading things back to myself. I'll often, if I've written a long piece of content, I'll read it to myself out loud. And if I
Mm,
can't read it effortlessly, then it's not how I would have said it. So
yeah.
then I'll go back and make it so it is. So writing's really important to me. So it's lovely to have someone acknowledge that. Thank you.
You're welcome. And you've just said something that I'm going to pocket as well. Radical authenticity. Not just
Mm,
authenticity, radical
yeah.
authenticity.
Radical authenticity. And that
Yeah.
means just not the version of the authentic you that you kind of want to manipulate people into believing is who you are and what you stand for. It's like the radical authenticity is just like the whole lot. The
Mm,
whole lot, the bit that you can sustain forever because
yeah.
you're not layering on anything that
Yeah.
isn't real.
My
Mm.
husband is a superb wordsmith, and I think having had the good fortune of hearing his spoken word, reading his written word, it rubs off, and
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
a
sure.
sponge, and reading the things that you write, and just talking to you now, it all starts to percolate and gets added into the rich vocab that I know is going to come out in my written words. Not
Isn't that
plagiarism,
wonderful? Isn't
inspiration.
that the power of women?
Mm,
Isn't that
isn't
the
it?
power of women? Can you
Yep.
imagine? And I'm not a man basher, but I don't know that two men would have that conversation that
Mm,
you just had. I don't sure men would share that. That's beautiful. Love
mm,
that.
love it. So I understand in your work, Jill, you only work with women. Is that right?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
So what inspired you to have that pure focus?
Yeah. I think I love working with women. I have worked with men before and not enjoyed it as much. And there's really nothing more complicated to it than that. It's my preference. I like working with women more than I like working with men. So that's what I do because it's my
All good.
business and it's my rules. And
Brilliant.
yeah, that's the truth of it. I absolutely love working with women. I get paid to have interesting conversations with bloody incredible women. I'm the luckiest woman in
What
the
an
world.
absolute privilege that is.
What the hell? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, magnificent. So
Yeah.
you previously mentioned that you see a lot of women beaving away at person light, but you believe in full fat, contrasting to
Mm.
what we were talking about before the break. But it's a
Yeah.
fantastic phrase. Tell me what you're seeing and what do you mean by that?
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think it actually goes quite well with what I'm doing for myself as well. I think what I have now is the full fat version of my diet. It's the full fat version of what's right for me.
Mm,
But what I mean by is it, you're right. I see so many women, because women is my world. I see so many women who are working so hard and trying so hard, and they're listening to all of the advice and they're plowing through and they're working on really a light version of the business that they really, really want.
mm,
And I believe in understanding what does the full fat version of your dream business look like? Because I tell you one thing for nothing, building any business is hard.
mm.
Any business. So if
Yep.
you're going to do it, pick the full fat version. Don't, yeah, be like you say, beaver away at a light version of what you really want. Go
Mm,
for the full fat version because that's where your passion is.
mm,
You will absolutely not have sustainable passion and grit and resilience that you need, that every business owner needs, if you are really trying to achieve a second rate goal, a light version of what you really want.
mm.
Um,
Do they
I truly
recognize
believe that.
that, or do you need to hold up the light and and put a spotlight on the fact that they're not really optimizing their full potential?
Yeah, it really often needs a spotlight for people to realize this. One thing I often say is that we tend to stay within working within the known and the new known. So, in
Mm,
other words, we'll be where we are now, this is our known, and then we'll have our eye on something, but it's still within our own ecosystem, it's still within our own zone. We're not looking outside of that. And so one of the phrases I like to say is that I take women from the known to the known to the unknown. And I think it's that unknown allowing themselves to explore what the full fat version of
mm,
what their, because they're unique business as well. Often when we beaver away at this light version, it's because we're trying to copy the business someone else has.
mm.
And that doesn't tend to equate with the full fat version in terms of what that means for us.
Yeah.
Full fat version as well, it's not always about more. It's just about the richest, fullest, most fulfilled version, if you like, of a business.
So where does the almost competing aspects of is it a lack of ambition or is it a lack of self-belief that they deserve the full fat version?
Lack of self-belief.
Mm,
Absolutely. It's, I think we set an internal bar. Oh, so sorry. We set an internal bar at the level we believe we're capable of achieving. And it's only when it's a little bit like Neo in the Matrix,
mm.
when he's with the little boy and he's bending the spoon or moving the spoon. And, he has to realize there is no spoon or whatever
Spoon.
that analogy
Mm,
is. I think it's a little bit like that. When women finally realize that this, whether it's a societal bar, a cultural bar, it's a bar they've inherited from their parents, whether it's something that their teachers contributed to, whatever that is, whether it's because they're a woman and their opportunities have been limited, whatever that is,
mm,
when they realize that it's a self-imposed limitation, a self-imposed bar. And I always say this isn't about raising the bar. It's about
Yeah.
realizing there is no bar.
Yeah. Well,
That's
that's
when they
and that's
start, well, okay,
exactly
well, if there's
this.
no bar,
Yeah.
sorry.
Well, it's the same view that I have about glass ceilings because I think that just becomes a thing to complain about. And I am firmly of the view that you only have one if you allow yourself to have one. If you don't see it, get on with it.
I I love that you said that. I so love that. That can be an unpopular opinion too.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I've literally had to find
mm,
the exit in a large room of people by voicing that
yeah, yeah,
in a presentation a few years ago. You're absolutely right. Women don't
you
like
can.
it because I think
Yeah.
it's, they don't want to give it up. They've held on to it forever.
And I think that's not always a conscious thing. I think,
Mm,
it's a balance here. I think the patriarchy has meant that women's opportunities have been less than men's opportunities, but we can't change that
no,
past, but we
no.
absolutely can have a completely different lens and attitude on the future.
Mm,
And I think that's really important.
yeah,
So
in
yeah, I love that
fierce
you said that.
agreement. Yeah.
Mm,
You
mm,
talk about rewilding, and when I think rewilding, I think about, a restorative process in nature and planting trees and
mm.
bringing something back. And you also talk about cutting away what we don't deserve or what doesn't serve us. First question, in the context of the work that you do, what's rewilding?
Rewilding for me, so a lot of clients will come to me and they're overwhelmed. They've created a business that is now overwhelming them, and it doesn't look like the way they want. It doesn't look the way they want it to look. It isn't serving them in the way they want it to serve them. They're not enjoying their business. And quite often, the answer to that is to go through this rewilding process. And what I mean by that is looking at your business and cutting away what doesn't belong to allow what does belong to thrive.
Mm,
So it really is absolutely like it says on the tin, it's the same in nature. That's exactly what nature does when an area is left to rewild.
mm,
And I think we can do this with our businesses because I see so much complexity in business that doesn't need to be there. I see
mm,
so many women trying to do all the things. And, 80% of the things aren't serving them or aren't
mm.
necessary and are just energy drains.
Yeah,
Um, but you have to be quite brave
you
to
do.
step
Mm,
away from the crowd and say, you know what, I'm not buying into that anymore
yeah.
because I don't enjoy it. I don't like doing it. So I'm not going to
And
do it
I know
anymore.
that even in starting Power of Women, and I've said very very publicly, this is my favorite journey that I'm just embarking on now. We've only been out the gate in the public domain since April, but it's been a work in progress for 6 months prior to launch. But already, um, there are aspects and social media is one of them that can be a huge time thief and other bits and pieces. But
Mm,
I've had to step back and say, okay, bang for buck, what am I getting a return out of time invested? And there were a couple of thought leadership pieces that I was probably doing, twice as many as was necessary per week, and they take an enormous amount of time
yeah.
and thought. And they, to your point, they weren't serving me. There wasn't enough return if I looked at it in a pure ROI sense of a more commercial business. And it's like, okay, let's trim, let's review, let's get this into a more containable and productive flow. So going back and using all of my former business skills with an ROI measure and putting the same lens over what I'm doing. But you have to stop and think because it's very easy. And you said women are saying they're not enjoying what they're doing. And
Mm,
we allow ourselves to get into a point. And whether we're working for somebody else and we blame them for making us do it, so often we're our own worst enemy. It's all about us. We do it to
Absolutely.
ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. For lots of reasons, for
Mm,
lots of different reasons. Sometimes at the beginning, we almost, at the beginning of a business building journey, I think a lot of women make their business more complicated than it needed to be to make themselves feel
feel,
legitimate.
yeah, I think you're spot on. Mm,
Yeah. And
mm,
actually then, you don't notice how the layers of complexity are adding one on top of the other until further down the line. And it's like, hang on, I'm pedaling so fast in first gear
mm.
and I'm not getting where I want to get to. And actually, I think part of that rewilding process is, imagine if you're on a push bike and you just go into a a hard, I say a harder gear because I can never remember if it's shift up or shift down, but if you go in a harder gear, so your legs are moving a bit slower, but with every
Lower
turn, you're
gear.
covering a lot more
Yep,
ground. Lower gear.
yep,
Thank you, Di.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I think it makes complete sense and everything becomes lighter. It's like, think about when you declutter a room.
Yes.
How good does it feel afterwards?
I
It
did
feels so
that. I did that on the
good.
weekend. I had allowed a new space to become overly cluttered, and the that feeling
Oh,
of when you take
beautiful.
things out. Yeah,
Yeah, that can
yeah,
be so powerful. It
yeah.
also,
It's a great
I
analogy.
think actually, yeah, it is. And I think clutter in our businesses really still, it kind of holds back innovation too,
Mm,
because we're
mm.
so busy servicing this monster of
Yeah,
a
you haven't got time
ball
to
of
be
stuff.
influenced and observe newness and what's going
Mm,
on out in the
yeah.
marketplace. And I was thinking about that, Jill, when you were talking about, now you're getting out and going for a walk and things. I think that the
Mm,
same thing. I mean, I get my best ideas when I'm away from the desk, doing something completely disconnected from the actual doing of the role. And you've got to, look up and look outward for inspiration. And it comes from the most unlikely places.
doesn't it? It
Mm.
really, really does. And I'm exactly the same. In fact, I don't know how I managed before when I was barely leaving my four walls. Um, where was my inspiration coming from then? That's a really good question.
Yeah. But you'll be
Um,
inspired by your clients too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that's the truth is
Yeah.
every single one of my clients is incredibly inspirational. So I'm not short on inspiration from that side. But actually, I thought leadership is very important to me. And it's very
Mm.
important to all of my clients. Thought leadership, one of the one of the parts of the definition really is unique contribution. What is
Mm.
my thought on this? What is my unique take on this? And that doesn't come from consuming other people
No.
or consuming anyone else's content. It comes, like you say, on that walk where you've got silence and you're allowing enough space for thoughts to come up and be noticed.
Yeah. Back to your radical authenticity.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Mm.
that's absolutely tied up with it.
Yeah. So, Jill, can I ask you, what is it you love most about what you do?
Coaching amazing women. Like I
Mm.
say, I still have to kind of pinch myself. I spent over 25 years working in commercial insurance. Like, I did not love what I did.
Mm.
I watched the clock most of the day. I lived for my lunch hour. I,
Mm.
I did not love that work. I loved a lot of the people I worked with, but I did not love that work. Now, I, there's no difference between my life and my work because I have wonderful friends, but I also coach incredible women. So my working day is as amazing as certainly as my time outside of work is. And I
Yeah.
think I have to pinch myself for that sometimes. I think
Yeah.
that makes me incredibly privileged.
It does. Makes you privileged, doesn't make you lucky because you've
Absolutely, you're
created that,
right.
but it does make you privileged, and I feel the same
Yes.
way. Having the
Mm.
conversations that I'm having through Power of Women, I'm probably driving those in my inner circle mad because I'm like, guess what? I mean, I just get
Yes.
so excited about things, and some of the feedback that's coming back. I messaged a guest that I'm interviewing for the podcast tomorrow, and I just shot them a reminder earlier today, and they came back and said, "Loved your last episode, sharing it with all my friends." And it's like that, little things like that, just, I mean,
Oh,
that's exciting. I just, you know,
best feeling ever,
isn't it? Isn't it? Yeah.
isn't it?
So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Couldn't
the
agree
little
more.
things. Mm, it
Hmm.
really is. So, Jill, before we wrap up, can I ask, what is a phrase that defines you?
What is a phrase that defines me? I think people know me for a lot of phrases because one thing I do, and it's intentional, is that I do repeat a lot of the same phrases because I kind of want to become known for those phrases. So I think, stop beavering away at a light version of your dream business and build the full fat version. That's a phrase I'm known
That's
for
that's
sure.
a Jill Moakes phrase.
That's a Moxism. Um, Another one that I use a lot is it's your way and the highway. And I suppose that's one that I would always
Mm,
hold my hat on. It's
mm,
it's about finding your own path, your way, bringing in that radical authenticity. What is your unique contribution in terms of thought leadership? Um, I think your way and the highway sums that up for me.
lovely. I can so see why the clients engage with you. It's
Thank you.
a motivating, empowering experience. So congratulations on that, Jill. How do
Thank you so
people find you
much.
if they're looking to engage some of those brilliant Moakes isms?
The Moxisms. So they can go to gillmoakes.com. And that is where they'll find everything. They'll find some free resources. They'll find all kinds of goodies over there. There'll be links to my podcast, Heads Together as well. So lots of bits and pieces over there to entertain them. And then mostly I hang out on LinkedIn, and I'm
Yep.
at Jill Moakes on LinkedIn. I also write a Substack called It's a People Thing.
Ah, well
So
done.
yeah, so they have that as well. And I am on Facebook and Instagram, but that's not my main places to hang out. But I'm at Jill
Yeah.
Moakes on Instagram.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. And Jill, I'll put all the links that are relevant on the show notes, and like you, I like hanging out on LinkedIn. Facebook and Insta's a time thief and valid, but uh, I'm not sure it's quite our world. I think I agree. I haven't investigated the Substack world yet, but I think that's probably a place I should visit.
Oh, Di, I feel like you would love it. And I think it would
Mm,
love you.
excellent. Well,
Hmm.
I might need to engage some of your coaching around that as a personal pursuit. But Jill,
You would
fantastic
be
to
welcome.
speak with you today. Thank you so very much for joining me, and I've
I've
loved our
really enjoyed this.
conversation.
I've really enjoyed it, Di. Thank you so much for having me.
That's brilliant. So, if you have enjoyed watching the podcast or listening to the podcast today, please share it with a friend. Jump on Instagram and Facebook if that's your thing, or you can find Jill and myself under our personal names on LinkedIn, and also on our respective websites. Jill's is jillmoakes.com. Mine is powerofwomen.com. And there's lots of fabulous recommendations actually coming through for potential guests and topics that are coming through from the Power of Women website. So thank you so much for those. Please keep them coming as we build the pipeline for 2025. I can't believe we're saying that already. And we look forward to joining you and you joining us next time.